Good morning, all. We will start the session sharp at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Hey, Princey, thanks for joining. Okay, good morning, all. Welcome, all ISTQB aspirants, to the day 2 of ISTQB training series, part 1. Okay, today we'll continue with the module, which is basically the first module, which is fundamentals of software testing. Okay, let me know the audience first. Who all attended our previous session? I mean, the day 1. Audience, can you please comment in the chat box? Who all attended our day 1 session? Okay. Okay, so let me know the audience first. So those who don't know about us, we are a software training organization primarily focusing on software testing, DevOps, data science, and full stack development. And we have offline presence in both Trivandrum and Kochi. Okay, so we can continue with the module 1. Maybe actually we can just have a quick recap or overview of the day 1 session for the interest of those who missed the first session.
Sure, John. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for introducing. So, good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to the day 2 session of part 1. That is, we are going to discuss about fundamentals of testing. So, we had a part 1, day 1 session where we discussed about couple of topics from fundamentals of testing. So, for the interest of candidates who have joined, today as fresh candidates, maybe I'll do one quick recap for them. Sorry, actually my screen is kind of frozen. 1 second, let me reshare so that it's visible.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Yeah. So I will start with doing a quick recap of what we discussed on day one. So basically, we discussed about what is actually the software testing all about and the different objectives of testing. Then we discussed like what is the difference between testing and debugging. Then we have that topic where we discussed about the process oriented quality assurance part, and we discussed about quality control, quality management, all those stuff we discussed. Then we came to a topic where we discussed about errors, defects, and failures. So how do we differentiate those things we discussed? Then we did a defect and root cause analysis, that is termed as RCA here. Then we came across the 7 testing principles we have in software testing for ISTQB. Finally, we discussed about the different activities and tasks related to the test process. So starting from the test planning phase to the test completion phase. So these are all the things that we discussed on day one. So continuing the topic, I will start with the next main portion, that is the test work products. I will say like this is a continuation of test activities and processes what we discussed. So if you remember, I will just walk you once through that topic, I mean activities and tasks. So we started off discussing what is actually test planning. So from the test planning phase, we moved into test monitoring and control. So test planning is the phase where the test manager or the test lead prepares all the activities related to testing, like the budgeting, the environment we are going to test, then the resources who are going to work. Those all things related to testing, we document in a test plan document, which we usually have for all of the projects actually. So now here we are going to discuss about in each phase of test process what we discussed, starting from test monitoring to test completion phases. What is a test work product? So before learning what is a test work product in each of these phases, we was first want to understand what is actually a test work product. So in ISTQB, test work product means the output of each of the testing activities. For example, if I'm considering a test planning phase, what will be the output of that test planning phase? That is termed as test work product. Similar applicable for all other phases. Like if suppose the second phase is test monitoring and control, what is actually the output we are getting when we finish that particular activity or particular task? So that is called as a test product. So consider like what is the output of that phase, that we term it as the test work product. So here we have mentioned in the slide starting from monitoring and control, but we obviously had a first stage which is self-explanatory. That is why that is not kept as a common point there. So actually the first phase is test planning and control, which obviously means the output will be the test plan document we are having, correct? That is having all the objectives of testing, or the budgeting, the environment we are going to test, what all are the resources, the timing constraints, all those things we'll be documenting in test planning phase. And the output will be, we'll be having a document, like a test plan document we'll be having. So I would like to understand from the audience also, like in your project, maybe like, do you have a test plan document for your projects? Any responses if I could get in chat? Do you basically have a test plan kind of document before you actually test your start your testing in your projects? Any response? Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Ashwati. Yeah. Thanks, Parvati. Yeah, I think almost all of us have a test plan document when we are working in a project. Before actual testing starts, we will be having such a kind of document where the objectives are mentioned. So the first phase, test planning phase, the work product that we are getting from test planning phase is test plan document. Now let's go to the next phase, that is a test monitoring and control. So if you since you are attending the session first, maybe I'll just do one brief idea. Like monitoring and control is where you can relate the example of regression test case execution. So suppose I have only 2 days of execution for my regression suite, which I have around 1,000 plus test cases. What I can do is I will pick the priority 1 and 2 test cases for my regression execution so that I can complete my regression execution within the specified time limit and also with a good coverage. I mean the critical component coverage. So that is what we do in a that action what we do, like picking up the priority 1 and priority 2. So based on the actual progress, we decided like, okay, for 2 days, I can pick up these cases for my execution, like a P1 and P2. That is actually, we are comparing against actual progress and you are taking a control action, like picking the P1 and P2. That is actually called a monitoring and control. So how, what will be the work product here? So work products typically may include test reports or how the test is progressing, some kind of progress report or some kind of test summary reports you'll be having, right? So that is actually the monitoring and control work product. Also, can you quickly give a response, like do you have some kind of summary reports after your maybe your execution, test execution, you will be having some kind of reports that you will be showcasing to the stakeholders, right? Like, do you have such kind of summary reports available, mentioning all the blocked cases or what all are past status, what are all in fail status, some kind of report you will be producing, right? So do you have such kind of reports? Yeah, I think team is mentioning yes. So, yes, we do have such kind of reports. That is actually the output work or the work product of monitoring and control activity. Now, the next phase, that is the test analysis. So here we'll be examining all our requirements or the user story. In Agile, we'll call it as the requirement as user story. So we'll be examining all our acceptance criteria there and we'll be preparing some test conditions, right? So that is actually what we are doing in the test analysis. So test analysis work product may include all the defined or prioritized test conditions. So if you could see, we can see in the slides also it is marked as at the top side, you can see an important hallmark with cross across, which means actually this session, what we are discussing is not very much important with respect to ISTQB, but 1 or 2 times we have seen some questions appearing from this area, but that is not considered as important as, I mean, the first sessions like objectives or principles of testing. But here and there, at times we see like these questions are asked, but you can walk through this and make an understanding of all this topic. So next phase, after the test analysis, we are in a phase of test design, where we are designing all our test cases. So test design work product will be test design results in test cases. Like test cases is the one that we are preparing, right? So the output will be of that phase will be the set of test cases to exercise the test conditions defined in the test analysis. So that is self-explanatory. Then coming to the next phase, after the test design phase, we move on to the test implementation phase. Test implementation phase is where just prior to the execution phase is the implementation phase. So now we have to make sure all our test suite, like, or if you are doing some automation execution, all your test suites should be ready to execute. So that is what we make sure in test implementation phase. So obviously the work product of implementation phase will be the test procedures and how the sequencing is done, all the test suites, everything should be ready. So the work products are considered as test procedures, sequencing of those test procedures, and then the test suites. Next comes the execution phase, where we are actually executing all our test cases and seeing the results of those test cases. So what will be the work product there, or the execution work product will be documentation of status of individual test cases, correct? We will be marking the status of each of our test case, like if it is a pass or it is a fail, or is it blocked due to some reason. So all those things we'll be producing as some reports. So that will be the work product of execution phase, and all the defect reports you are producing, right? So that also is a work product of execution phase. So documentations about which test item, test objects, test tools, testware were involved in testing, like what all that is obviously mentioned in the reporting, right? Like we will mention all the reproducible steps for our bug, or we'll be mentioning the version, the test tools that we are using, all those things will be documented there. So obviously those are part of execution work products. Now the final state of the final phase is the test completion work product. So if you remember, test completion is the phase where we have now executed all our test cases, we have the results in place. So obviously some kind of reports or summary reports will be there for us as a work product, and also now we are in a completion phase. We have completed all our testing activities. So we will be doing some retrospectives. Retrospectives, if you're not familiar with the agile development model, I will quickly brief that. A retrospective is one of the ceremony that we observe in Scrum. Scrum ceremonies. Like what will be discussed is in the last sprint or in the last sprint where the feature is developed, we'll be discussing what went well in that sprint, what didn't went well, and what are the action items for us so that we can improve in the future iterations or in the future releases. So such kind of action items, whatever we get from previous execution, those action items will be part of completion work product. So that is what stated here, the summary reports and the action items for improving in future iterations. So those are all part of completion work product. So this is all about the different work products starting from the initial planning phase, test plan document, and I'll just do one recap here. Monitoring and control phase, where we include all the test reports. Then analysis phase, all the prioritized test conditions. Design phase, we have the test cases. Implementation phase, we are ready with our test suits, sequencing, everything is kept ready. Execution phase, we have executed and produced our defect reports there. And completion phase, we have all the action items and also some kind of summary reports, which will be showcasing. So I will just do a pause here. Any questions from anyone regarding the topic we discussed?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that implementation, that particular terminology might be a little confusing because when we are working in our real-time projects and our actual projects, this implementation is slightly in a different persona. Like the implementation will be happening right after development and testing. We are going to implement the application in the any of the client environment or the actual implementation. But here in this ISTQB terms, the implementation point of view is little different. So don't get confused in that. Maybe actually, maybe you can explain it once again. What is the exact implementation that we are focusing here or we are discussing here?
Yeah, sure. So when you relate to your real-time projects, maybe there is a confusion there between the implementation or execution phase. I mean, most of the time we consider implementation phase as part of our as an execution phase only when we are considering real-time. So don't confuse like that. Execution phase you consider as the word itself means, like execution means we are really executing all our test cases, whether it be a manual execution or a automated execution. You are actually executing all your test cases and finding the results to log a bug or marking it as pass or fail. So those kind of status you are updating after execution. So consider that activity as part of execution. And implementation phase, you always remember that happens just prior to the execution phase. That means in that phase, you have to make sure that do you have everything in place so that you can execute your test suits. So which means, suppose if you're using an automated execution, then you have to make the sequencing ready. Like you have the tear down or those kind of setup and tear down cases, right? So those sequencing should be kept ready. What all are in the initial stage of execution? Suppose if I have a dependent test case which I have to execute based on my priority, then that dependent test case, all those things, all the test data to input. Like example, if it is a login module, the username, password, all those things that should be kept ready, so you are not at all stuck in the execution phase. So think like you should make sure all your test wire, like the environment, everything should be kept ready for your execution phase. That is considered as the implementation phase. I think now it's much more clearer for you. Okay, so let's move to the next topic, that is traceability between test basis and test work product. So here test work product, we already understood now, that is the output of each testing activity. That is the test work product. And what is test basis? I have explained this in day one. Like test basis is actually in ISTQB, they call it as whatever source of information you have in order for you to derive your test scenarios or your test cases, that will be considered as the test basis. I will make you understand with an example. For example, if you are testing a hardware product, okay, you will be having some kind of specification document which you will be referring in order for you to derive the test conditions or for the test scenarios. So that is considered as a test basis here. So depending upon the context of the component you are testing, this test basis may vary. So in Agile, you have the user story with the acceptance criteria, right? So that acceptance criteria or the user story is a test basis for you. Suppose you're testing a mobile application, then you'll be having the set of supported devices, like will it support Android, will it support Mac, those kind of supported devices, and the requirements will be given for you to test that, right? So that is a test basis for you in the mobile testing. So likewise, depending upon the context or component you are testing or the software you are testing, this will vary. So now we are going to understand what is this traceability between the source of information for you and output of test activity. So here some points are mentioned here. This topic is also not very important, but here and there at times we used to see this as part of ISTQB examination. That is why here also just crossed across the important hallmark. So we have to analyze the traceability is like we can analyze the impact of changes. Whatever changes we have, we can analyze those impact, then making the testing as auditable, meeting the IT governance criteria. So these are all kind of depending upon the product you are actually testing. Suppose you are testing a medical product, then you will be having certain other specifications also, which you should make sure, like the FDA guidelines and all, right? So these are all dependent upon the context or the software you are testing. Then there is a point mentioned like improving the understandability of test progress report to include the status of elements of test base. So suppose you are having some progress report, like how your testing is progressing. You will produce some kind of progress reports, right? So the test progress reports makes you like improving your understandability, like how you are now with your testing process, and the status of elements of each test basis. Test base is the source of information. So each element, like the requirements given to you, is one of your test bases. So the status of elements, those all things you'll be able to understand much more. So here the one example is mentioned here, which is sufficient for you to understand what is the traceability actually. So suppose you are executed your test cases and you have all your execution results. So you'll be marking the requirements that passed their test, requirements that failed their test, and requirements that have pending test, right? So that is kind of a traceability you are maintaining with your requirements. That is your test basis is your requirements, and the output of that execution phase or the execution activity is your what you call it as test work product in ISTQB. That is your status of that test case, right? Like passed or failed, or do you have pending again some test to execute. So that is how you maintain the traceability between test basis and your test product. So I think with this example, it is much more clearer. So you are maintaining a traceability between your requirements, which is your test basis, and your output of testing activity. That is the test execution phase test work product. That is your status of your test cases, like passed, failed, or pending test. So
okay, Ashwati, maybe you can check with the audience how they are managing their traceability. Are they using any electronic way of test management tool, Jira or Azure DevOps, to maintain the traceability, or you are still working with your old Excel templates? So how do you handle your traceability? Team, maybe you can let us know in the chat box. Are you following the test management tool? Or?
We can maintain that traceability within that tool itself. Sometimes if you're not using any tools due to some customer defined things and all, then we'll be doing that manually. So if you could, Jira. Thanks, Parvati. Jira, it's one of the traceability. We can see the traceability there in Jira. Okay, Jira. I think most of the team is using Jira. Yeah. So even we have Azure DevOps also, which in some projects we used to have Azure DevOps. It's kind of the same thing like Jira, but it have much more features compared to Jira tool. So there also we can maintain the traceability. I think most of the projects now it's using Jira only. Otherwise, if you don't have any tools, then we have to maintain this traceability kind of thing. So we'll be having some kind of traceability metrics for our team, right? So that some projects they'll maintain it as manual task also. Okay, thanks for your response, team. So with that, let's move to the next topic, that is psychology of testing. So whenever we are in a team, working as a team or as an agile team or any team we are part of, communication aspect is very, very important whenever we are working as a team. Like this collaboration between the team members, the ways we communicate with our co-members, all those things are very, very important when we consider even the testing phase. So we should be in a phase where we are maintaining a good rapport with our development team also. So there is, if I say in an agile perspective, we are considering a single team, not as separated as developers or as testers or as POs. We don't have a separation like that. Actually, we are working as a single team. Our team is considered as a single scrum team, and each and every member in this team, whether it be a developer, whether it be a tester, we are working towards a common goal to maintain or achieve a high quality system. So there is nothing like we are a developer, we don't have to interact or we don't have to contribute to our like quality deliverables. There's nothing like that. Communication is very, very important here. That is what we are focusing here in the psychology of testing. So when we are communicating, suppose I'm logging a bug as a tester, I am testing the system and I'm logging a bug. So we should communicate those things, like whenever you are describing a bug or logging that bug to the developer, we should communicate that in an effective way. We should not be ending up in battles. We should empathize that particular situation and make the developer understand that we are working towards a common goal in order to achieve better quality system. We have to empathize that situation, and we don't have to like pinpoint or make battles there, but the communication should be effective. So communicate the test results and other findings in a very neutral way without criticizing the person who created the defect. That should be done. Like whenever you are communicating, as mentioned in the second bullet point, you should empathize the situation and then you have to communicate in a neutral way. You should not be criticizing any person there. That's the main point here. So here, it's mentioned about the mindset of a tester and a developer. So usually we will see questions from this area, something maybe a knowledge level 1 question or a knowledge level 2 question you can expect from this area. So a tester's mindset, what is a tester's mindset? You should be curious, professional, critical eye, attention to detail. These are the key points you should be remembering. Motivation for good and positive communications and relationship. So motivation and communication, anyway, that's kind of not only a tester's mindset, a developer should also have. But specifically, if we consider tester's mindset, we are testing the system and we have to make an understanding of details of the system we are testing. That is what it's mentioned as critical eye or attention to detail, so that we can find out the defects or the failures with the system. So that is why tester's mindset is considered like that. So it tends to grow and mature as the tester gains experience, which is obviously correct, right? So whenever I'm joining as a fresher in my team, whenever I'm contributing to testing, it is very, very different when I'm 3 year or 4 year experience, right? Like experience makes us mature, like to know like what will be some of the edge cases that we need to consider in such an application. So those kind of things we grow and mature while we gain experience. So that is what discussed about the tester's mindset. Now coming to a developer's mindset, my developer's mindset may include some of the elements of tester's mindset. Like some elements he should be also having, like example, he should be thinking from a user perspective also whenever he is developing a particular module, so that he will be having an idea like how this should be available to the user or how he will be using the system as such, so that he can consider those points also whenever he is doing the development activity. So that is what it is called. Developer's mindset should include some of the tester's mindsets also. But usually what we consider the developer's mindset or their role is they are most interested in designing and building solution than in complementing what might be go wrong with those solutions. So he will be always the role of a developer. We expect like he will not be much concentrating on like what is wrong with the solution he provided, but rather he will be always focusing on designing and building the solution for that system he is developing. So when we consider this particular topic, you have to keep in mind like the communication aspects, the motivation, or those things actually is common to both developer and tester, but specifically a tester's mindset should be having some attention to detail or critical eye kind of things, and developers mindset should include some of the tester's mindset also. That is what we have to remember this. So with that, let me check with the audience one thing. Suppose if you are doing a demo, or you are doing a presentation to the client for the product you have developed in phase one, maybe, okay, and someone from the team is presenting a live demo to the customer. That time something, if it goes wrong, some case something didn't work out that time, or something went well, didn't went well, sorry, that time what do you think, like who will be responsible for that particular failure when we did the demo? Who will be responsible for that? Can you just give a quick response, audience? Who do you think will be responsible when a demo or presentation that we did to the client for our product didn't go well? Who do you think that will be responsible in that case? Whole team, okay. Shruti, team, okay. Parvati, thank you. Full team, okay, yeah. I think team is very correct here. It's a sole responsibility of the team. We will not be saying it's the fault of the developer or the tester. It's considered as a team. That's why we say communication and other aspects, collaboration between the team is very, very important, because we are working together as a team. And if something goes wrong, means it is actually the responsibility of the team as such, or the scrum team as such, which includes all the developers, testers, POs, everyone who is there in the team. It's a sole responsibility of the team and not a single person. So that is the key aspect we have to consider uh, when we consider the psychology of testing. I think we have a question. Or all activities related with our product should be updated prior to execution as a team. Yeah, correct, Parvati. You are correct there. Yeah. So I think
Actually, from the response from the audience, we can see all majority is saying that okay, the
yeah,
scrum team will be responsible for that failure. So
correct.
that makes into a assumption that majority of our audience are working in agile teams only. Because
Correct.
in our old days when we are working in waterfall model or V model, okay, the sole responsibility will be lies on the QA when something happened post development phase or testing phase. But
Yeah, yeah.
nowadays, in this world of agile, the whole responsibility lies on the Scrum team.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see majority of
That's
working in agile projects only.
yeah. I think so. The team can understand, like when we say some other terms also in the presentations, they can easily digest that. I think
Yeah.
the first day, I
All
think
good.
we had a mixed participants where most of them were not aware of agile, so that's why we have done some prerequisites, or we have done some understanding for the audience in order to get this agile terminologies. So I think with that we are done with the day two topics, because we have covered the majority of the things in day one. So I will just do a recap of whatever we discussed during this session. That is, we started the discussion with the test work product. That is the output of each testing activity we are having from the test planning phase to the test completion phase. And the second part, we discussed about how the traceability is obtained between the test bases, that is the source of information, and the test work product. That is the example like requirements to status of test cases, like passed or failed status. That is one example where we can relate here. And finally, we discussed about the psychology of testing, like how the tester's mindset should be, how our developers' mindset should be, all those things, like the communication aspects, those things we discussed in the psychology of testing. So these were the main areas we discussed today. So I will discuss some sample queries from module 1, that is fundamentals of testing, from what we had in the previous ISTQB examination, so that the team is aware how the questions will come up from these topics. Before that, any questions you have related to the topics? Yeah, I think Parvati commented like, if it's a QA miss, we are responsible to give explanation. Yeah, correct. That's what we do in the root cause analysis, right? We had a topic where I think in the day 1 where we discussed about root cause analysis. So exactly like what Parvati was mentioning, the QA miss analysis we'll be doing. Suppose if I'm receiving some production bugs or UAT bugs, from the QA end, we'll be doing some kind of analysis why that was not captured in our functional testing, or that was why that is missed in our testing. Suppose if we want to add some test cases to our suit, in order to capture that, we'll be adding that as an action item. So that is what we do for miss analysis. That is the RCA that we do. Correct, Parvati. Thanks for your additions. So if we don't have any questions, I will move on to discussing some sample questions. John, we can move ahead, right? Any questions we have from the audience?
Yeah,
No, right?
maybe we can get some input from audience, like anybody following any root cause analysis specific methods in your project. Because since Parvati was raising that particular point, if we miss something, that we obviously worth to give an explanation. So anybody following any root cause analysis approaches, anything like 5-way techniques or fishbone diagram or Ishikawa diagram, anything you're following as part of your current process?
So if you are not following any kind of fishbone, those kind of things, then obviously I think anyway you will be doing some kind of misanalysis at least in your team for your bugs that we receive from production. That activity should be at least there, whatever Parvati must mention.
In our the good part is, like, in our Agile projects, we are simply calling it as defect triage meetings, and we'll be doing a mix of both, almost all the techniques, like mixing like fishbone with fishbone diagram, Ishikawa diagram, or maybe even 5-way techniques. We use everything in the defect triage meetings. Anybody participated in any defect triage calls or meetings? Can we get some responses in the chat? Or your test leads or test managers will be attending that? Okay, we got some responses. No, okay, no problem. Anybody actually participated in any defect triage calls or root cause analysis? We'll raise this as bug, and defect triage call we'll discuss on the same. Yeah. Okay.
I think the audience here is like whatever response we are getting, I think most of them are aware of the processes actually.
Yeah, it seems good. Yeah.
Thanks for those responses. So it's always good when we have good audience to interact. Thanks everyone for. Also test case will be added to regression suite. Exactly, that's what the
if any missing test cases.
Yeah, that should happen ideally.
To avoid that kind of a test case coverage or test case misses, what we are following in our team is like the testers will be doing a test case walkthrough once the test case are ready to the whole Scrum team. It is a 30 minutes meeting only. The testers will be giving a high-level walkthrough of the test scenarios, so that even the developers can also notify or also contribute towards test case coverage. Okay, this particular scenario is missing in your test case. Something they can I mean, the whole Scrum team can contribute towards test case coverage. That is one practice which is following in my team. Yeah, Parvati mentioned, BA also reviews it. Yeah, in that meeting, BA is also participating. BAs can also review it. Good point, Parvati.
Yeah. So I think we had a good discussion there.
All right. Yeah, continue. Stick to your topic.
Let's discuss some queries which we had from previous ISTQB papers, so that we have an understanding like how the questions will come up and how you should answer, how you should rule out some of the options and you should arrive at the correct solution. So with that, let me discuss through the questions. So first question, which activity in the fundamental test process includes evaluation of testability of requirements and the system? So let's go through the options like testing, implementation and execution, test analysis and design, test planning and control. So let's go through the options and try to see why it's wrong and what is the right there. So I will go in reverse order. So test planning and control. So there we are not evaluating the requirements. In planning phase,
Actually, one second, actually. Maybe let our audience to give their answers or their options in the chat, and then we can come to the discussion and we'll sort it through. Which one is the correct one? Team, any guesses for the first question? Which answer that you feel is that's the right one? Okay, we are getting some responses with B. Any other guesses? Anybody? Okay, actually, maybe we can get into the answers.
Yeah. So Parvati, your answer B is absolutely right. That is analysis and design is the correct answer here. So let's discuss like why the other options are not correct here. So planning and control, Ashwati, you are also right. Just planning and control is the phase in the beginning, what we do under test activity, where we are documenting all the objectives of testing. That is nothing to do with the evaluation of testability of requirements. So planning and control can be ruled out there. That is option C. Option A, implementation and execution, that we discussed just a couple of hours ago. Like execution phase is the phase where we are actually executing the result, and implementation phase is just prior to execution, where we are making sure all our testware is ready in order for us to execute our test cases, right? So implementation and execution is also ruled out there. So which means obviously test analysis and design may be the right answer here, but we have an option none of them also. But how we arrived at analysis and design, we learned in that particular activity, like we are examining all our user stories or the acceptance criteria or the requirements in order to derive our test cases. So in analysis and design is a phase where we are evaluating the testability of requirements. That is what to test and how to test. That is determined in analysis and design phase. This is the correct explanation, how we arrived at option B. So now the second question, which of the following best describes role of testing? So I think already team has seen the answer. So this is a very straightforward question where we can see the options and arrive at the right answer there. That is, testing can be used to access quality. Testing shows that software is error-free. Testing shows that software is not bug-free. So we have learned the objectives and the principles of testing, where we learned like we can't say whenever we are testing and we are done with our testing, we can't say that our software is 100% bug-free. So what we are making sure when we are testing is we are just checking whether the requirements are met, and it is up to the stakeholder expectations. That is what we test in while we are doing it. The testing as part of the testing activity. So the best suitable answer here will be B and C are almost kind of related options only. So here we are actually accessing the quality of the system. So which means A is the correct option here. Any questions there for our question 2? How we arrived at the answer? Okay, I think that's very straightforward. Which of the following is not a testing principle? This is a question from testing principle. So we have learned 7 testing principles, and we have to go through the options and identify which is not a testing principle. I will go one by one. Like let the team audience give the response. Testing can prove that there are no defects. Is the option right? Or testing can prove that there are no defects. Can audience just give the response? Testing can prove that there are no defects. Or I'll go with the option B also. Testing activities should start as early as possible in the SDLC. So testing should start, it says testing should start in early in the SDLC life cycle. Option A and B, what do you think? And C says testing everything is not feasible except in trivial cases, and all of the above is not a testing principle. What do you see? What do you think that which would be the right option? Any responses? Parvati or Ashwati, Safana, you have been responding to others, right? So just give me a response. It may be right or wrong, no problem. We'll discuss that, why that is right and why that's wrong. Any response?
Yeah, we are getting some response. Actually, it's a straightforward theory question. We
Correct,
were
correct.
discussing in the K level 1, K level 2, those
Correct,
questions,
correct.
right? I think it's from the K level 1, straight and
Okay,
forward.
yeah, yeah. So here, all of the above is not a representation. That is what I got one response. D. Okay. So maybe you have missed the first day one session, right? That's why maybe you are not able to reach at the correct answer here. So here, thinking through option A and B, that's not correct. Actually, the option is correct here is option C. So here, which of the following is not a testing principle? That is, testing can prove that there are no defects. Testing activities should start as early as possible in SDLC. Testing everything is not feasible except in trivial cases. So when we are testing a very complex application, or let it be any application, do you think like testing every combinations with every preconditions that is really um, feasible when we are working as a project? Maybe in trivial cases we can say it may work, but except testing everything is it feasible or not? Do you think like all combinations we can go ahead and test?
No, we can't.
Yeah,
For sure.
I think Parvati, you are correct. That is not feasible. So here they are asking the question like, is not a testing principle. So which means this is actually coming under the testing principle. If you could see the 7 testing principle, one of the principle was C. Testing activities should start early as in the life cycle, which is also correct, because we say it's like whenever we are starting testing very early, it saves time and money. That is the point that we learned in the testing principle, because when we are starting testing early, like we can find the defects, either be it a static testing or a dynamic testing. Like whenever you are seeing through the requirements and trying to identify the failures there, or requirement gaps there, actually you are contributing to or part of static testing there, which means you are able to identify that missed requirement very early in the life cycle, which may be costlier in fixing at the later stage, which means that testing early in the life cycle or in the SDLC is actually a benefit for us. So B and C is actually coming under the testing principle. A option says testing can prove that there are no defects. We can't say like that. That's what we discussed in one of the previous questions also. We can't say like there are no defects when the testing is completed. We can only say like it meets the customer expectations, or it is meeting the requirement specifications that are given to us. We can only say like that. Maybe there are some edge cases or some cases we have not captured as part of acceptance criteria also. So those kind of things may be missed. So that is why we can't say can testing can prove that there are no defects. So which means that is not coming under the testing principle is A. Any clarifications needed for this further? Good, right? Okay. Which of the following is not a typical testing objective? This is coming under the topic objectives of testing. That is, let's go through the options. To verify whether all specified requirements have been fulfilled. To build confidence in level of quality of test object. Test object is nothing but the software or the product you are testing. That is called as a test object. To find defects and failures, thus reduce the level of risk of inadequate software quality. To comply with contractual, legal, and regulatory requirements and standards, and to verify that test objects compliance with such requirements or standards, and none of the above. It is asked not a testing objective. So you have to identify from the options which one is not a testing objective. So if you have gone through the testing objectives topics, it's a very straightforward question. All those points which are listed here actually is coming under test objective. Like we are making sure all the specified requirements have been fulfilled. That is option A. Whenever we are testing a product, actually we are ensuring that we are building confidence in the level of quality. So option B is also correct. These are all points mentioned under objectives, which is straightforward. C, to find the defects and failures and reduce the risk of inadequate software quality, which is also correct. D point, it's kind of context dependent, like depending upon the software you are testing, this thing has to be complied with. That is, suppose if it is a medical product, means there are certain regulatory or FDA guidelines that should be followed as mandatory. So which may be correct for a medical product, and maybe in some kind of products we are testing, this point number D will be applicable. That is, it has to obey with the standards that are mentioned. So which just means D is also correct here, which means the correct option to be selected here is none of them, because all the four listed here are coming under testing objectives. Now another question from testing and debugging. Testing and debugging are similar. So this is very, you can answer it even though like you are not part of day one session. Any response? Testing and debugging are similar. Is it a true or false statement? B, false. Okay. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that is correct. So testing is different from debugging. Debugging is actually considered as the role of a developer, and testing is what we do once when the tester logs a bug. The developer does the debugging activity, then finds the root cause, then he fixes the defect and gives back to the tester in order to do a confirmation testing and to ensure that this working is this is what the fix is working as expected or not. So that is what we do in a confirmation testing. So actually testing is and debugging is not similar. They are different activities, which means answer is false, which I think most of you have said it rightly. Is the development activity that finds, analyzes, and fixes such defects is the definition of. This is also related to previous question only. Can you just respond? Is it related to debugging or is it related to testing? Development activity that finds, analyzes, and fixes defects. What do you think? A, okay, debugging. This is what we discussed just now, right? Correct. Yeah, Safna, Ashwati, you are correct. Development activity that finds, analyzes, root cause analysis that they do, and they will give the fix. That is part of debugging. So we had other options: development, testing, debugging, none of the above. It's straightforward. That is part of debugging. Debugging is the role of. So which I think these questions are kind of related only. It's the role of. Debugging is the role of developer. So debugging activity is considered as the role of developer, and he debugs the code. Suppose example, like suppose you have logged a bug, like a variable is not returning a expected value, due to which from the functionality perspective, the tester logged a bug. So whatever the developer do is, suppose he is handling Java code, then maybe the ID he is using is Eclipse. So he will put the code on the debug mode in order to analyze like what is the root cause of that. So actually the debugging he does is the role of the developer and not the role of the tester. Next question: in agile development and in some other software development lifecycle, testers may be involved in debugging and component testing. What do you think? As the team is part of an agile model, what do you think the answer will be? A, okay, true. Okay. Any other conflicting responses? So if you remember the topic for what we do in an agile way of working. So actually, I could say like in an agile environment, the role of tester is much higher as compared to other development models, because the role of the tester starts from day one when the project starts. Like he is involved even in the requirement phase, like for the grooming sessions, what we call, to analyze the requirements. Suppose he is able to find out some gaps there, then he'll be pointing all those things. So from the requirement analysis phase, he start his job there. Then in the design phase also, in the agile model, testers are involved in, so that they can understand like what is the workflow that is going to happen in that particular project, which all data tables will be impacted due to that. These all things he'll be able to suggest and contribute to. So which means tester's role is higher there, and in the which is obviously mentioned in this statement also, like agile development model, tester is even involved in debugging and component testing, which is a true statement. Okay, deciding how much testing is enough depends upon business and project risk, business and technical risk, business, technical and product risk. What do you think the answer here? Question number 9. Any response? So there was a topic which we learned, business, technical and product risk. Parvati, you're right. That's the correct answer. So here we have a topic where we discussed about factors affecting the testing effort. So there we have learned through multiple factors, where we discussed some of the technical aspects, some of the product risk, some of the project risk, some are coming under project risk, some are coming under business things. So which means seeing through the options, the correct, most suitable option to choose is C, because testing testing effort depends upon all these factors, not only business or technical or business or project, which means option A and B can be ruled out, and correct option is C here. Which of the following is a common test objective? Preventing defects, comparing actual results to expected results, casual analysis, analyzing the cause of failure. So here, this is a topic from the objectives of testing. Suppose if you are not going through that topic and trying to answer this question, you may be confused, like whether option B is correct, or you may have a confusion with option B, comparing actual to expected results. Because from the real-time scenario, if you think, you may think that also is kind of true there. But when we learned the objectives, it was clearly mentioned as one of the objective, that is major objective of testing, is preventing defects, which means option A is correct here. That is preventing defects. Okay, so I think I'm done with discussing some 10 sample questions I discussed. Any queries you have from the audience? Anything you want to clarify, you want to discuss once more for better clarity? Good. Okay. John, you want to add anything? I think we have discussed 10 questions also. We are good to wind up.
Okay, for good. Team, any questions you need better understanding or any queries that we can take it up? Or we are good? What do you think? Are we good to close for today? Okay, going good. Okay, in that case, we'll close today. Thanks for joining and
Thanks
happy weekend.
Yeah, happy weekend. Thank you.
And we'll reconnect next Saturday with the second module.
Okay.
Thank you.